I'm Jamie Stalkup, Associate Editor of TV Drama. Today, I'm joined by Mohini Herse, creator, director, writer, and producer of the six-part series Appetite, as well as Karen Radzyner, also a producer. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So to start at the beginning, how did Appetite come about? I hear it was inspired by several true stories of delivery cyclists being killed, but what inspired you to make a whole series revolving around that scenario?
Yeah, so Appetite actually was developed several years before then. So I started developing the concept back in 2017 when it was, delivery apps were just kind of coming onto the market. And Sydney, where the show was shot and where I've grown up, was kind of going through a few changes as well. We had a lot of kind of tram works and construction works, and I was living, in a share house in my early 20s, finding it really difficult to kind of navigate wealth and what I had access to, and delivery cyclists just seemed to kind of be such a incredible representation for what that is. And then fast forward a couple of years when they're just kind of absolutely taken over the market. Everyone is very reliant on deliveries. It was the middle of the pandemic. International students, at least in Australia, didn't really have very much of a say during the pandemic. And then there were a whole bunch of delivery cyclist deaths, I think around 5 in a period of a month in Australia. And it was just super alarming to see that idea that I'd had, or this kind of situation, just escalate. And so that's how this kind of version came into existence, with a death and a mystery and just kind of a more sinister undertone, because that was just the reality of the situation in a way.
And Karen, how did you become attached to the project, and what appealed to you about it?
I had actually seen a Screen Australia announcement back in, earlier in the 2020, 2021, when they gave it some development money. And I had loved the concept and felt very jealous of the people who were working on that. And then at some point, as it was getting closer to being greenlit, Mohini and SBS put us together, essentially, because they needed another producer on there so that Mohini could take over the writing and directing focus. So I was really thrilled to join. And what appealed to me about it was I am really always drawn to telling stories that matter and that can shine a light on subjects about people who we don't normally see on screen, and stories that we should know about and that should be in the conversation but aren't necessarily. And I had loved the Ken Loach film, Sorry I Missed You, early, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that was also about gig economy workers. And when this kind of came to me, and it was about the same subject but with this fantastic hook and a different tone and approach to telling that same really, story that needs to be told, I was very excited to get involved. And Mohini's a super talent, and I've just had the best time working with her.
And Karen was the perfect fit as well. We love Karen.
And when developing the series, from what I understand, you interviewed delivery drivers, union bodies, lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. What did you take away from those interviews that you incorporated into the scripts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first and foremost, we wanted to go into those interviews so we could kind of understand the world, and authentic representation and storytelling is really important. And so a lot of delivery cyclists who we interviewed then became script consultants, story consultants throughout the whole process, and then were there at the one of our cast and crew screenings. So they were there for the whole process, and they got to shape the story with us, which was really, really important to me creatively as well as the team. But to answer your question, kind of what we gleaned from all of these interviews with academics as well as the writers and app workers was just the underside, or the side of the gig economy, or at least delivery apps, in particular food delivery apps, that we just as customers have no idea what is even going on. Like data mining, that there are things in Appetite that we never really got to explore because we were kind of in a way shackled by this 6 by 10 minute format, which we can talk about later, the long form of Appetite. But we just found out that there are just the way that we give our data and to these apps really does kind of empower these larger companies to shape how we as the public move through our lives. And those kind of conversations that we had really helped shape the kind of sinister appetite. So this antagonist and this all-seeing voice of appetite. And we did want to lean into this heightened kind of version because that was actually kind of based off of the truth of this bizarre power that we're all kind of not aware of. And then a kind of more human side was just how the delivery cyclists and riders just wanted to be represented. They felt very, invisibilized by the work, but a lot of the interviews we had were just full of humor and incredible character and just amazing kind of stories and lived experience. And so we also made a conscious effort to make sure that our characters and the show represented that. And that's our tone. We never wanted to kind of be didactic or too doom and gloomy about it. We wanted to show these people as they were, and they're just incredibly fun, kind, hardworking people.
What are some of the deeper themes that Appetite explores, and what do you hope viewers take away from watching the series in the form that it is in now?
I suppose one thing thematically is obviously the gig economy we have already talked about, and I'm sure Mohini, I'll leave you to talk about that cost of convenience. But this is such a universal story. This story is happening everywhere in every territory, and that was one of the fascinating things at Cannes, was the amount of interest from so many territories, because we all recognise this world, these characters, what is happening. It's a global change, and I think we wanted to show what these characters, what their worldview was and what their concerns were, but also to show people watching, the rest of us who are not delivery riders, that this is a choice that we have. It's in our hands.
Exactly. And Karen mentioned the cost of convenience, which was like this theme that we just kept on coming back to. And, throughout the show, we have not just the customers, examining their own relationship with convenience culture, but we've got the characters, Tessa needs to get an exam done at what cost, this job of this gig work, it's dangerous, potentially exploitative. Raj is making a few decisions. It's this kind of grey space where we're not trying to point any fingers, because in a way we're all making tiny decisions which shape everyone's relationship with that. But then at the end of the day as well, Appetite's about community. And it's also about how people do come together, and how through everyone coming together, there might be a chance to change things at the end. And our story at the end is a hopeful story. So that's kind of a greater theme, community, and then also our relationship with convenience culture too.
And you briefly mentioned maybe a longer form version of the series. So what are your hopes for the future of Appetite, and what would you like to explore in a potential longer form version of the series?
Everything that we uncovered during the interviews, as well as just a deeper understanding of our characters. The biggest piece of feedback that we've got, from Appetite is that it finishes too quickly. People want to know more. That we've established just such an incredible world where, there's so much to mine from it. So what I spoke about, data farming, our relationship with the gig economy, we never saw the perspective of customers. We never even the accident that happens in episode 1, that was our way into the story, but it wasn't, explored further due to format as well. So there are so many different ways that we can retell Appetite, and I'm really excited for that long form version too. So yeah, fingers crossed. We've had some, conversations. It's the writer's strike, so as well. So, but yeah, fingers crossed.
And Mohini, tell me about your creative process, since you were creator, writer, director, and producer on this, which is a lot of roles to take on at once.
Yes, it was too many. No, it was great. I learned so much, but it was a lot of roles. And the only reason I was successful in executing any of them was because of my team, was because of people like Karen, who came on board and believed the project and brought so much experience and knowledge and helped me in that role and was so patient. And same as Neil Sharma, who was the setup director of Appetite. He's much more experienced in directing, and we're friends, having worked together on previous projects before. So I wanted to learn from him. He also was interested in the setup directing credit and loved the show. So he came on board, and also the writing team, which is Nilesh Verma and Grace Tan. And again, it was just such a team effort, and everyone was just so in sync with this project that, you know, everyone was able to lift each other up. And I learned so much, but man, there were a lot of roles. There were a lot. It was a lot to juggle, and I don't know if I would do that again. But because we were so united as a team, it made my job a lot easier to kind of, you know, tag team. So when we came closer to production, Karen, for example, would take on the heavy weight of producing. My writers would maybe, you know, help me further with the writing while I was working with Neil and figuring out our schedule and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it did get to a bottleneck, as Karen surely remembers, but we got through it.
Mohini is such an amazing team player. So she really lives by the ethos that this show has in what you take away from it. That is the way Mohini works and lives. And she included all of her creative team and all of those writers that she was talking to at every stage. And so the development of the scripts really was happening by weekly writers' rooms with the other writers, and also with our story producer, Elise McCready. And we'd have a day together in a Zoom, and because this was still COVID era, and then Mohini would go away and have like sub meetings with Nilesh and Grace, who were the other writers, and keep the story moving along. And then we'd regroup again a week later, and there might be a new scene breakdown to look at that point, and all work on together. And then once there was a full set of scripts, then Mohini was able to step more over into the directing. But there was that transition where the scripts were still being written, the ideas were still being found, and Mohini did have to find a way to step across to the directing shoes. But at every step, she just kept everyone involved, but also knew what she wanted it to be, and was very decisive in which was the right direction after all the ideas were thrown around. It was always Mohini who knew which way we were going to go next. So we had a great creative leader in Mohini.
Oh, thank you.
Well, the show has such an interesting premise, and like you said, we all experience the gig economy, and especially food delivery drivers, every day. So I'm excited to see the future for Appetite.
Thank you so much. We're very excited too. Fingers crossed, hey.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.